Hey everyone, my name is Sean Arnold and welcome to episode 2 of Yugioh Lore Duels. Today we're going to be looking at the Gishki clan after looking at the Gem Knights from yesterday. The Gishki clan is a really interesting clan, and like Gem Knights, it seems like the designers behind this clan or this archetype wanted to take an old mechanic in the game and try to reimagine it and reinvigorate it. And this time we're looking at ritual summoning. The Gishki are known as ritual in Japanese, and therefore they focus mostly on ritual summoning, but they also kind of do this in terms of their lore. In their story, they are a clan which have the same power as the Ice Barrier clan, a lesser known clan in this game, but instead of using their powers to kind of enhance themselves, they use it to transform themselves into greater monsters known as Gishki, almost like evil Gishki. The Gishki clan are all about gaining more power, and therefore they often challenge the Gusto clan in order to gain more wealth and more resources. However, their plans to take over the Gusto's area or Gusto's resources are repeatedly halted by other wars that go on. First, they are dragged into the war against Steelswarm, where they have to team up with the Vylons in order to kind of take out the Steelswarm. Then the Vylons turn against everyone and decide to eradicate all clans, I guess in the name of peace, and therefore the Gishki have to team up with other clans in order to take them down. Unfortunately, before the Gishki can then go back to taking on the Gusto clan, they are thrown into another war against the Steelswarm virus. The Steelswarm virus is basically a more evil version of the Steelswarm army, where it corrupts others and takes over them. And unfortunately for the Gishkis, that is what their fate kind of comes to. They are many of them are recruited and taken over into the Evil Swarm clan, and some of their monsters, such as Ketos, even transforms into Evil Swarm monsters. Unfortunately for the Gishkis, by the end of the war, there aren't too many of them left, and I think there's only 2 survivors, one being Amelia and the other being one which I've forgotten. So the Gishki kind of have a tragic fate, but due to their power hungriness, they kind of meet their demise and don't really end up doing too well. But in terms of actually playing this archetype, I really enjoy this deck because they are an archetype which is quite old yet still incredibly relevant for this day and age. And when we get to doing the deck profile after this duel here, I will show you a little bit more about why they are so viable. They have just so many tools in their arsenal, and their tools still really help them keep up in this day and age. They're not going to be winning tournaments, and they're not going to be too crazy in that kind of sense. However, they are going to be, I still find them to be quite viable, and in terms of competitiveness, I would say they stand a better chance than, say, Gem Knights and some of the other archetypes which I'll be exploring and talking about later on. So on the field here, what we've got is, we've got Gishki Abyss and Gishki Mindkraken, I believe that's called. What's great about some of their ritual monsters is they can be disruptive in many ways. Mindkraken is a level 6 monster which allows me to look at 2 cards or up to 2 cards in my opponent's hand and then shuffle one back from their hand to their deck. But they also have effects which allows me to shuffle cards from the field and also shuffle cards from the graveyard. And the fact that they're shuffling is really good, because in this day and age, destruction isn't really so hot in this day and age unless you're destroying spells and trap cards with, say, Twin Vista. My opponent is going to use Copycat in this instance, and he is going to copy my stats in order to make his monster stronger. But this duel here is not really going to be much of a challenge against my deck here. I just wanted to show off this duel because I think it really highlights a lot of the different combos which Gishkis can do. Gishkis are typically referred to as an OTK deck, and in my experience, once I started to learn how to play the deck quite a bit, I was able to kind of just win duels quite quickly. But similarly, that doesn't really give me the opportunity to kind of show off all the different combos they can do in a single duel because they win so fast. But currently, like I said earlier, they are still quite competitive, but they're not necessarily very as consistent as other OTK decks out there right now. I think they're very enjoyable to play though, and they're really fun to do. One thing I really like though is the wealth of support cards that a Walker archetype has, and cards such as Surface make this deck so good. Surface allows you to revive a level 3 or lower fish, aqua or sea serpent monster from your graveyard, and when combined with cards like Gishki Abyss, it just turns it into a searcher which is just so good. Gishki Abyss can search out any monster with Gishki in its name that has 500 or less attack, I believe, maybe 1,000 or less, I'm not quite 100% sure off the top of my head. but that allows me to search out more monsters, and I am just going to keep on doing it to keep on searching more and more and more. They're just so consistent. They plus like crazy. They recycle really well, and they're just a whole load of fun to play. It's been a while since I've played a ritual based deck, and to play one which is really quite consistent is quite refreshing. Although I'm aware that there are better ritual decks such as Necros in this day and age, Necros have kind of fallen out of popularity quite a bit, and therefore it's nice to see Gishki can get some kind of exposure as well. Anyway, in this current situation, I'm using the effect of Gishki Vision, which is kind of like the Manju or Senju of the 10,000 hands for this deck. When I discard this card, I'm allowed to search out a ritual monster with Gishki in its name from my deck to my hand, and I search out their big boss monster, Steelswarm. And now I'm going to go and do a rank 2 summon into, well, you're going to see what it's into in a second now. Herald of the Pure, is it of the Pure Light? Yes, I believe it is. Herald of Pure Light or Herald of the Pure Light. And this is a really cool rank 2 monster because it allows me to recycle some of the monsters in my grave to my hand. And I'm going to do that right now. So I'm going to use this effect. I'm going to detach one of my monsters, and that will allow me to grab one from my grave, add it to my hand, but then I have to reshuffle a card from my hand back into my deck. But it's pretty good. This works out really well because I can get rid of cards which I don't necessarily need in my hand, exchanging it for one which I've already used in my grave, and we fill up the grave quite quickly with this archetype. So I'm going to get rid of Twin Twister, as my opponent has no back row really, and this is going to allow me to now really bring out Zilgigas. Rank 2s are really good for this deck. Right now there is a rank, I believe it's a rank 2, I might be a rank 3, but there's a really cool rank card called Totally Awesome. Totally Awesome it's been a very dominant card in the meta recently, and it's kind of like Solemn Judgment on crack, but it's in the monster form, and that works so well for Gishki. And if it was in this game, I would definitely be running it, and there are ways to summon it out in this deck. Unfortunately, however, it's not in Legacy the Duelist, and maybe Legacy will get updated and we'll see it in there sometime, but it works really well and helps this deck maintain even more relevance in the current meta. There are also cards like Deep Sea Diver, which we won't be able to use unfortunately here, but Deep Sea Diver gives me access to synchro options in this deck, making this archetype even more and more versatile. Zilgigas is going to attack Copycat, and Zilgigas has a really cool effect where I can pay 1,000 life points, I can draw a card from my deck, and if it is a Gishki card, I can then shuffle a monster, or I think shuffle any card from my opponent's field to their deck. It's kind of consistent, it does hit quite a lot. You do have a lot of Gishki cards in this deck, so sometimes you do get a secondary effect off, but to be able to pay 1,000 life points to draw regardless is really useful because it gets you through your deck quite a bit. Plus he's 3200 in attack and level 10, which gives you even more options later on. So as you see, my opponent here has surrendered, and so let's go into a deck profile and talk about what Gishki can do a little bit more. Okay, so welcome to the deck archetype build portion of this video. Gishkis have a lot of different cards, and we're not going to use too many of them, including a lot of their extra support here, but the build which I've got here I think works really well, and it kind of works, kind of synergizes quite well and makes this deck really flow quite well. I've taken out all the generic support stuff. I'm not going to talk about those. These are in the main deck, but I'm not going to refer to them at all. They are what they are, and if you're not sure what they are, do ask in the comments down below. So there's a variety of ways to approach this build, but what I'm going to talk about is how this deck works in cores. We're going to talk about the main core of the deck and then the other supporting cores which help the main core work effectively. The main core of the deck are your ritual monsters. Zilgigas is your main boss monster. He has 3200 attack, and like I said earlier in the video, he can pay 1,000 life points to draw a card, reveal it, and if it was a Gishki monster, shuffle one card from your field into the deck. Be careful with this card. If you do run it and your opponent has no cards in their field, you will have to shuffle one card on your own side of the field, but I mean, that's really a mistake you're not going to make. Being level 10 here does give us options to rank 10 as well, and you will be doing this quite a few, but we'll get into that when we get into the extra deck a little bit later. The other Gishki monster which I use here is Soul Ogre. Soul Ogre we use mainly for its level, but also for its effect. Unlike the other Gishki monsters, this one is more of a guaranteed effect, whereas the other monsters kind of are dependent on what your opponent is holding right then and whether you draw the right card at the top of your deck. Soul Ogre's effect is you can discard one Gishki monster, target a face-up card on your opponent controls, and shuffle it into their deck. So it's got a really good effect. It's a bit more reliable than Steelswarm, but what I also like is that it's searchable and can be used for trading, which gives this deck just an extra bit of draw speed, which is really helpful. Last but not least, we have the two limited level 6 monsters, Kraken and Mind August. Mind August shuffles cards in the graveyard. You can take any 5 cards in any graveyard to shuffle them into the deck, which can be really disruptive to certain decks and their plays. And Kraken similarly looks at 2 cards in your opponent's hand, and you get to shuffle one of them back into their deck. Really good disruption tools. If you get these on the first turn, well, this one a little bit later, but if you get Kraken on the first turn, it can be really harmful to your opponent. Similarly, the card we use to summon these out is Gishki Aquamirror. Aquamirror is really good. It's kind of like Gem-Knight Fusion in that it can recycle itself. If you have a Gishki monster in your grave, a Gishki ritual monster in your grave, you can shuffle that back into your deck and then add this to your hand, making it recyclable over and over again. The only thing with this card is that when you use it to ritual summon, you must have monsters which are equal in level to that card, although we have ways to get around that, so just be aware of that. Now, those are the main core of the deck. That's what you're going to be mostly trying to win your games with, but you need cards to support them and get your pieces together. And the monsters which we're going to be using for that are Gishki Shadow and Gishki Vision. They both have similar effects. You can discard them, and you can add a ritual monster from your hand to your deck if you're using Vision, or a ritual spell card from your deck to your hand. Also, these cards can be used as substitutes for an entire ritual summon. So if you have one of these in your hand and you go for a ritual summon, this can be used as the entire tribute, even if you're using Steelswarm and he's a level 10. So this makes it really cost effective, and you will be recycling these over and over again. So these are the cards which get you to your main combo pieces, but the rest of the cards in the deck really help you support Shadow and Vision quite well. First of all, we have Gishki Abyss. Gishki Abyss, when summoned, allows you to add one Gishki monster with 1000 or less defense from your deck to your hand. That could be Vision, that could be Shadow, that could be most of these monsters except for Mind August and Soul Ogre. So it is an amazing support card, and it activates whenever something is summoned. So special summoned, flip summoned, normal summoned, it works, it triggers for that. Because of this, we have ways to trigger that repeatedly, and one of those ways to do so is Bountiful Princess. Bountiful Princess is a level 1 monster, and when it is normal summoned or special summoned, you banish it, and then you get to special summon one level 4 or lower fish type monster from your deck. Your main target is going to go to Abyss, because then you can +1 off of that, but you can also go into I think that's actually your only target, so use this to just go out into Abyss and keep abusing Abyss to add more cards to your hand. Also, we have Deep Sea Diver. Deep Sea Diver allows you to search out a level 3 or lower sea serpent type monster from your deck. The options for that are Vision. Vision's the only options for that, and then you can use that to go into a synchro summon. I'll talk about the synchro summons, which we will go into a little bit more, but also we have Gishki Beast, which lets you target one level 4 or lower Gishki monster in your graveyard, especially summon that target in face up defense position. I know I'm flying through these cards quite a bit, but hopefully you're getting the idea that these cards just constantly search out each other. They constantly bring out Abyss, they constantly bring out Vision, they constantly bring out Shadow over and over again, making ritual summoning almost costless in this deck. It's really good, and it works really well. The other cards which we have in this deck to support us are one copy of Moray of Greed. This lets you shuffle 2 water monsters from your hand into the deck, then draw 3 cards, so if you've got a bit of a rough hand, you can recycle it a bit. 1 for 1 you use to discard a card into your graveyard and then summon out Bountiful Princess. We know what she does already, and she can get into Abyss quite quickly, but there are sometimes cards where you don't mind throwing into the graveyard because you can get them back quite easily, especially with the following 2 cards, Salvage and Surface. Salvage lets you target 2 water monsters with 1500 or less attack in your graveyard and add those to your hand, so you've got tons of recycling there. And Surface allows you to target 1 level 3 or lower fish, sea serpent or aqua type monster in your graveyard and special summon it. Again, it's another way to bring out Abyss just to keep on summoning here, but you could also use it for Deep Sea Diver if you want to recycle her as a tuner. And you probably won't use it for Bountiful Princess, but you can do, it's always there as an option too. As well as that, you can also use it for Vision if you want to use him again for a ritual summon. So that's the main deck. Like I said earlier, it has so much support. It works out so well. I really do love this archetype. To support this, we have an extra deck too. The extra deck, it consists of one fusion being Norden. Norden is Norden, he goes into rank 4s. The synchros which we have here are Herald of the Arc Light and Old Entity Hastor. Herald is the main target here. Herald is a really good card, and you can get it out with Deep Sea Diver and Vision quite easily. Herald has 3 effects. One is a Macrocosmos. Any card sent from the deck to the main deck or hand to the graveyard is banished, so it's good for disruption against your opponents. Be careful, that will hurt yourself though sometimes. Also, during either player's turn, when a spell card, trap card or monster effect is activated, you can tribute it and negate the activation, so it's a Solemn Judgment. And then last but not least, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add a ritual monster or ritual spell card from your deck to your hand. Really amazing synchro, works really well and supports this deck fantastically. If you don't want to go into Herald for some reason, the other option is Old Entity Hastor. He's more there as a beat stick, but his other option, his effects is, if this card is sent from the monster zone to the graveyard, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, equip this card from your graveyard to that monster, it cannot attack, its effects are negated, and then if this card leaves the field while it's equipped to the monster, you get to take that monster. So it's kind of a bit of a floater, but it's also there as a beat stick. It's just an alternative option to Herald. Speaking of Herald, we have the rank 2, which we looked at earlier, Herald of Pure Light. This is a rank 2 option for your visions, your abyss, and just another way to use those. And this one here allows you to recycle cards from your graveyard to your hand. Really good effect for that, since you can discard to the graveyard so easily. Then we have Centauria, which allows you to detach and exceed material from this card and return monsters on your opponent's field to the hand if it battles an opponent's monster. So this can be really destructive to establish boards. Moving on to rank 4s, Nightmare Shark is nothing special, I will talk about it, why it's there later. Abyss Dweller is Abyss Dweller. Bahamut Shark, I'll talk about it later. Castel is Castel. Silent Honorarch is Silent Honorarch. Ragnar Zero is Ragnar Zero. He's only in there as filler really. Hope Woven Dragon Spider Shark is a really good card in this deck. It reduces monsters' attacks, and if anyone tries to attack it, you can reduce the entire attack of your opponents on the opponent's side of the field. And it also floats when it's sent to the graveyard. You can special summon a monster in the graveyard. It's a really good card there, really solid card there. Now, Bahamut Shark is only really there because I don't have Totally Awesome. I spoke about Totally Awesome earlier on, but Bahamut Shark would be the ideal way to summon it out. But right now, because I don't have Totally Awesome, I'm trying it with Nightmare Shark. It's not as good, but Nightmare Shark doesn't have effects where I can attach water monsters to it as an XE material, and then it can attack directly. Never used it yet, but it's in there as filler because there's space. And last but not least, we have 3 more ranked monsters. We have Photon Strike Bouncer as a level 6 option, which can disrupt another player's turn and negate effects and then deal burn damage. Then we have level 10 options. Ravenous Tarantula is a really good card because it has a mini Raigeki effect, which can destroy all face-up monsters with attack less than or equal to this card. And this card gains attack and defense equal to the difference between your life points and your opponent's. And when you've got cards like Zeal Gygus in your deck, where you're paying a lot of life points to draw extra cards, it can work out quite well, quite easily. So it's in there as an option for that, especially if you want to do a field clear. And then we've got cards like Super Dreadnought, Rail Cannon, Gustav Max, which just does burn. Really good burn there, damage there. So that's the build. Hopefully you guys like it. Feel free to take it and experiment with it. Like I said, I think this deck is really solid. I think it can compete quite well in this day and age, and I had a whole lot of fun learning Gishkis. Thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Lord Duels, and hopefully you'll look forward to the next episode, which is going to be a little bit of a different deck also. See you then, and take care.